Are harmful viruses and parasites good evidence against a world created very good?
I think that's you, Diane.
I second.
Yes.
I
Well,
third.
we have to remember we no longer live in the world that's very good. So there are some things that are not very good. But God declared things in the beginning to be very good. So what we need to do is say, all right, God's word is true. Therefore, we will start with that and we will check out the science. And is it possible that these things once were very good? So if we look at some of them, we find that they have missing genes, and so they have undergone a process of loss, and they can no longer survive on their own. So they have to survive by attaching themselves to some other sort of creature. So that's not very good, but then that's part of the whole world going downhill. Maybe in the past they were very good. And sometimes we've found, well, they do have some bad characteristics, but they also have some useful characteristics. Some of the things that are considered to be intestinal parasites turn out to have useful functions. It's not so long ago before we thought that all bacteria were bad, but now we're told we have to look after our microbiome, which is the masses and masses of bacteria that live on our internal body surfaces. So sometimes it's a case of we just didn't know enough about the science, and the good scientific approach is not to write things off as being useless or bad. We just have to do some more research and find out. So having a biblical worldview is actually a very good way to approach science. We look at this thing, could it have a good function? We might find that it does. Has something gone wrong with it? We may find that it is missing some genes or missing some functions, but because it's attached itself to another living thing, it can survive. So if you look at the world from the biblical point of view, started out good, has gone downhill, or the history of the world is good to bad to worse, we can understand a lot of science. And just because we don't know all the answers doesn't mean there aren't any. We just need to do some more research.
Thank you, Diane. Let me just take over with a couple of practical examples than anybody else. I live in Queensland, which is a mega state size-wise, and an awful lot of sheep. Australia used to live on the wool of the sheep's back, was the old saying. It's not so true these days, but we still have millions of sheep. And one of the interesting problems you face as a sheep farmer is to actually deworm your sheep, right? You have to do it regularly, because otherwise the tapeworms and things like that will just compete with the sheep for food and kill the sheep if necessary. Now, it became very evident ages ago, and I remember doing a unit on parasitology as part of genetics, that the parasite actually is killing its food source. So even the evolutionists figured out that this is not working well, because if the parasite kills what it's eating from, it's not doing itself no good either. It's beneficial to keep the host alive. So here's what we discovered about treating sheep. If you actually treat them with high-powered drugs that kill all the tapeworms, they don't do as good as the sheep that just get treated and still have some tapeworms left. Of course, they do better than the sheep that are left untreated that are full of tapeworms. Now, you might find this fascinating, but the best homegrown remedy for treating sheep so far has been red cordial. So not only does it make the kids hyperactive at school and on windy days, it actually keeps the sheep healthy. If you leave a few tapeworms in there, they function well to keep the gut clean. If you get rid of too many of them, the sheep struggles to actually survive. So there's an example of where you change the conditions, and it can end up something regarded as a disease or a pest ends up being very beneficial to the actual sheep itself. The same is true for the bacteria Diane was talking about. My wife, as many of you know now, has dementia, and I've gotten very interested in some of the causes, and I was most amazed to find that by putting her onto probiotics, it certainly began to treat some of the autoimmune diseases like her arthritis and that. and that's been very beneficial. But the further back I look, I have a feeling that one of the causes of many of these autoimmune diseases, which ultimately lead to dementia, is a overreaction to bacteria. So we've removed bacteria from the food, we've removed it from the environment, we've removed it from your body with perhaps too many vaccinations or too many chemicals, etc. And the person itself is actually running short of good bacteria in their tummy. So mums, take my advice. If the kids want to go outside and play, let them play in the dirt. They develop their most immune system enhancement by the bacteria that God has put out there. 99.99% of these are beneficial to you. And as Diane said, the rest are degenerate. Glenn, you are nodding your head violently there. So what are you agreeing with?
Oh, just a soil scientist, Let the kids eat a little dirt. It's good for you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's actually true, because a spoonful of dirt is what I talked before. Has got more microorganisms than there are people on the earth, and the large amount of those are good for you, and you need them in your system. There are many animals that need to eat a little bit of that because it's good for the digestion.
Now we know what Glenn sprinkles on his cornflakes every morning.